And we have with us our dear sister Pratibha Daya, all the way from South Africa. And yes, I'm not forgetting, I have to introduce her. If she can be spotlighted, she's already there. Yeah, but her surname reminds me of something, Daya. Lot of compassion and lot of mercy, I must say. And all of you can see Brother Seelan, Sister Pratibha. Brother Seelan is now in Canada. He spoke a bit about you in one of the sharings. So thank you, Brother Seelan, for that. And let me extensively introduce Sister Pratibha because I have all the time. 2-3 more minutes left for my time to get over. So all of you, she's joining us for the first time, and she's the South African program coordinator for the BKs. And let me tell you a bit about her Lokik life. I mean, she was born abroad and she attended her school and secondary school in South Africa, in Durban. And she's completed a BA, bachelor's degree in computer science and applied mathematics. And her spiritual journey began at a very, very young age, at the age of 10, whereby she was impressed by Mother Teresa. And one of the persons also was sharing about the same, that how Mother Teresa did her selfless work in Calcutta. And then there was no looking back for Sister Pratibha. At the age of 15, she was introduced to the BKs in Lenasia in Johannesburg, and whereby when she started practicing meditation, particularly the Raj Yoga meditation, it had a deep impact on her. And that became the foundation from which she then started serving. And let me tell you, her service journey, it's been a long journey, almost 20 years, 1995 to 2015. She was based in Cape Town, coordinating the activities there in the Western Cape and the other sub-regional initiatives. She served on the board of the Parliament of the World Religions, which was held in Cape Town in way back 93. And she has been coordinating a lot of annual retreats for women in South Africa under the theme called the Women of Spirit. A lot of other allocates and a lot of other achievements she's got. She has designed also and implemented a 3-year intervention to bring into focus values such as Ubuntu and empowerment. So there you are, again, another common link, a lot of values being practiced. And as always, I would just introduce her in the form of a poem. And before I go to the poem, she's currently based in Johannesburg, while her work takes into other cities in South Africa and even the neighboring countries of Africa. So the poem starts now. So we have with us a very special guest serving Johannesburg and Cape Town, but actually Madhuban, Mount Abu is her original hometown. I'm sure she agrees. She's indeed one of the precious jewels in God's crown, helping souls who are otherwise dejected, undergoing a breakdown, thereby lifting their morale to a higher level from being down and acting as a savior for them, helping them not to drown. So with these few words, thank you so much, Sister Pratibha, for your time and your willingness to come. Again, it was just one phone call away, and the stage is all yours, and you can go on with the talk. We don't really have a lot of questions, but as questions come, we'll take them at the end and followed by that meditation. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj Bhai, and thank you for this opportunity to be with the family. And I know Brother Seelan is in Canada, but I think his heart is still here, so we still feel that connection. I think all of you all have already had a masterclass on surrender from Mohini Didi. I don't think I can add more in terms of understanding the depths and the definitions of surrender. But I would like to today just share a bit more from my own personal journey of how this aspect of surrender has unfolded for me. Before I begin, it's really wonderful to be with all of you just almost on the eve of Diwali. And so my greetings and good wishes to all of you for this festival as well, which is a reminder in some ways that we are like the moths that need to surrender to the flame, to that ultimate Deepak. So in exploring this theme of surrender, I think the first question I asked myself, and that is, what is our ultimate aim through this spiritual journey or in this spiritual journey? Because surrender is such an important sort of not just a virtue or value, but I feel it's such an important aspect of how our consciousness transforms, and how we begin to reconnect with the deeper truth of who and what we are. So in asking this question, and just for the self, when I ask myself the question, why did I embark on a spiritual journey? What was my motivation? What was that inspired me? And I think as Manoj Bhai shared, yes, my journey started at a young age. I was inspired by Mother Teresa, but it was this element of serving and needing to make a difference in the world, because at that very young age, as I read her article and growing up in South Africa, one became very aware of the suffering of humanity. And so there was this deep motivation to serve, to make a difference. But I think what became apparent for me was that one can only serve when one is full within. And that level of fullness within can only come through a deep spiritual connection with the divine, with God. And so the motivation for me for embarking on the spiritual journey was really to experience that deep closeness and connection with God. Because it is that closeness and connection with God that not just a knowingness of God, but a feeling of intimacy with God is when the soul can begin to experience power, deep spiritual strength. And it is on the basis of that spiritual strength then one can serve. So for me, you know, the motivation for the spiritual journey was that deep yearning and wanting and aim to create that deeper connection with God. And so then the question of surrender came up in a sense that what is it that prevents me from really having that deep connection with God? Because part of the surrender, as you all very lovely put it there, that one aspect of surrender is what I need to let go of. So what is it that I need to let go of that stands in the way between me and that union, that deep connection that I'm longing to have with God, with the divine? And so I began to explore and to see that what is it that comes in the way. And on one level, one thing we can see the attractions of the world. I mean, being a young person at that age, and as I was growing up, you know, just seeing what was around me, what my friends were getting up to, but just really feeling that, no, that's not what I want, because my yearning is something deeper. So the surrender, the first, the attractions of the world. Secondly, the stimulants of the senses, you know, not feeling that pull for the things that maybe others find attraction to. And then it became a little bit more subtle, and that is really about looking at dependencies. And one is the dependencies on on relationships. Yes, as a child, there was a dependency still on my parents, but how did I need to transform that into a relationship of mutual respect and understanding, and not just from that level of attachment and dependency. So it was also looking at how that became something that blocked my connection with God. And I came into the spiritual path at the age of 15. When I was living in Johannesburg, I was actually boarding with an aunt. And just to give you a little bit of context, that in South Africa at that time, it was a country that was governed by the apartheid laws, which really meant that there was segregation. I grew up in a very small town that was southeast of Johannesburg. And in that little town, there was no secondary school for children of Asian background, Indian children. So I had to go to Johannesburg to complete my secondary schooling. So, and when I was in Johannesburg, that is when I came into contact with Brahma Kumaris. But it was interesting that, you know, when I started the spiritual path and really began to not just meditate, but also to start living the principles and some of the disciplines, it did unsettle my parents, because within 6 months, they saw a complete change in their daughter. And so they did get quite concerned. So they were a bit hesitant for me to continue the spiritual path, because they didn't know what it was all about. Understandably so, because I sort of moved too quick for them. But it was at that point as well that I realized that I can't allow their fear to block my journey with God. And so it was also recognizing that how our relationships and dependencies on our relationships, that how we need to fulfill these relationships, but not to let these dependencies block us from deepening that relationship with God that we need to. And then the fourth level that I began to look at, and I think this is an ongoing journey, and it is a lot more subtle as the journey progresses, and that is to look at, you know, subtle things of approval, subtle things of ambition, and sometimes we could have spiritual ambitions as well, subtle aspects of looking at success and how I've defined it and how I need to redefine it, and my relationship with service, and all of these elements, I think, are also subtle aspects that begin to emerge as one progresses. And just becoming more aware that if anything becomes the block between me experiencing God's love, from me being able to stay focused and true to that relationship with God, then it is something that I have to become consciously aware of and let go. So these are some of the more subtle aspects that I would like to take up as how it has unfolded for me in my own personal journey. So in some ways, it needs courage. It needs courage to surrender, because our dependencies that we've created, or it's the known world in a way. And when to surrender, it's to really let go of this, what I know as the known, and to begin to almost venture into and take support from that which is subtle, from that which is invisible, and yet it's powerful. And therefore, it takes a lot of internal inner work to begin to to recognize how we latch onto limited, because that faith and the connection on the subtle needs to be deepened. So yes, it takes that courage. It takes that deep level of honesty to really look at the self and really do that inner work and really challenge oneself constantly to see that I'm not drawing on limited aspects. So where does the courage come from? And I think it ties in with this whole thing of why the spiritual journey for one. And that is that even though I may not have experienced the totality of it, there's the inner knowingness in the soul that there is a deeper joy, a greater sense of purpose and meaning for the soul, that there is something that's all powerful, all encompassing, that deep knowingness that every soul has, and that this soul too can experience that ultimate bliss of divine love. And I think it's that knowingness that always gives courage to keep moving ahead, to keep making the effort, to keep challenging the self, to keep releasing and letting go, and to also keep moving forward. It's not just to experience God's love, but it's to live that experience. And I think ultimately that is what it is. It's like, it's not just that feeling, but it's to be able to live that feeling. It's being able to give expression to that feeling in every aspect of my being, whether it's from my thinking, my attitude, my vision, my presence, that it needs to be informed and infused with divine love. I think that's the ultimate goal and ultimate drive for the soul. One way of looking at surrender, and I think in the world, surrender is often used as a term when they surrender to the enemy, giving up, giving in. But we know on the spiritual path, it's very different. I think for me, the way I've understood surrender is that when every aspect of ourselves, whether it's our mind, whether it's our sense of identity, whether it's our sense of how we use our talents and skills, etc., whether it's our resources. When we start on the spiritual journey, I think it's very important to recognize and understand that there's a mixture of everything. It's all, they often talk of it as Rajo Pradhan or Tamo Pradhan. There's a mixture of negativity, of attachment, or the vices in a way. And so for me, surrender has always been that as I offer whatever I have for the benefit of others, as I offer what I have for the service of God's work, as I offer my time, offer my skills, offer my energy, my body, etc. It's like it's not taken away from me. When I offer, I give it an opportunity to be purified. So for me, surrendering is allowing the context in which I find myself now to allow it to get purified by offering it. I remember one story that Brother Ken shared, and he shared that when he came when he joined the organization, one of the things he loved doing was singing and writing songs. And once he got the response in a meeting that he had in Mount Abu, that it's not about don't sing, but it's almost like you offer it in the service of God. And so it's like using that talent without the ego of having the talent. So when I serve in that way, I purify it, I divinize it. So for me, that is how I define surrender, that it is about an offering of whatever I have and whatever resources that I have, whatever talents I have, so that I give it an opportunity to be purified. I give it an opportunity to be used for a greater purpose. So the challenges in surrendering, I mean, we know what the ultimate is, and we know the benefits of it. But I think we all have a challenge around it as well. And I was looking at what were some of the things that challenged me. And, our context and our journey has a huge influence. So when I looked at myself and I just looked at, I grew up at a time when we were governed by a system that was very oppressive. Even as a child, I knew that the world is not as it should be. So already in me, there was this a very clear and distinct characteristic that not rebel in a negative way, but I'm not going to take anything just as it's presented to me. I'm going to question it and going to see the validity of it. It also, growing up in a system like this, also created a deep sort of an inspiration and a determination that I have to contribute to fix it. So in some ways, it really triggered an awareness that I can't just live for myself, but I have to live to contribute to making difference in a wider way. So it ignited this desire to serve. It also made me realize that not all systems of governance or people in authority are necessarily right or fair or just. So to be aware and to also have a critical mind in terms of being able to discern things and not just take things at face value. And also when I particularly started working, and my first job was really, I worked in an organization where there were mainly people of Afrikaans background. And of course, the attitudes of racism were very apparent because that's the way they grew up in a way. But in my experience working there, I realized that people are not bad, but often just submit to systems and positions of authority. They submit to it because it's easier. And so for me, it was like a negative form of surrender that. And so for me, it ignited this thing that it's not just about agreeing because it's safer, but it is about challenging things for the right reasons. So those were some of the influences, as I may put it, in a way, that made me ask myself the question, what do I surrender to? And it was very important for me to come to an understanding that I'm not surrendering to any institution. I'm not surrendering to personalities, because people are not ever 100%. There's always aspects to people. Everyone's on a journey. So what is it that I'm surrendering to? Am I surrendering to a philosophy? But ultimately, I think what came for me is that I'm surrendering to principles of truth, purity, and love. And so I use these three principles as my inner compass, as a way of guiding me in terms of the choices that I make and how I align myself, because it has to resonate for me that it is coming from a place of truth, it is coming from a place of purity, and yes, that and it is love. So so these things are important for me when I explore the subject of surrender and what it is that I'm surrendering to. So in one way, the easy part of my journey was to say, before I even completed my studies, I ended up living in a center. So from morning till night, yes, my life was there for spiritual service. And yes, whatever the diet, the disciplines, all of that was the easy part, I would say, because it was such a deep thing for the self that I wanted to live this life so that it makes a difference. And I felt deeply that the spiritual empowerment of people and dedicating one's life to helping people reconnect with their own spirituality and developing a relationship with God is really the highest form of service. And that too, it came as an experience when I went to Mount Abu, my first trip to Mount Abu, because I was at one point considering whether I should study medicine. But I was not too sure, because there was this thing that maybe if I study medicine, then, as a child of 10 years, when I was inspired by Mother Teresa, I thought I'll study medicine and then I'll work with her to make the difference that I felt I needed to. But when I started, joining the BK system of living and working, I reconsidered studying medicine. And one reason was that it would take many years of study. It was number one. Number two, my parents were not very cooperative. So it meant it would prolong my dependency on them. And so when I went to Mount Abu, I sat for meditation, and I remember just asking myself this question, okay, what decision must I make? Because I was very clear, any decision that I make must be something that speaks clearly from my heart. It's not I'm doing something because I'm told to do. Because 3 years later, 5 years later, there must be never a feeling of regret and say, I did it because someone else told me to do it. No, I needed to make a decision because I felt it was something that resonated with a feeling of how God wanted me to use my energy and my time. So in my meditation, I said, what do I do? Because after I leave from Mount Abu, then I had to make decisions about my university, etc. And it was at the Tower of Peace that I was sitting and meditating, and the question that came to me in that meditation is, why do you want to study medicine? And I said, ultimately, it's because I want to serve. And then the question was, what are you serving? And then I said, well, I will be serving the body. And then said, is that what you want to serve? Or do you want to serve the soul? And so it was a lovely thing that in that meditation, it became clear for me that what is it that I needed to do as my next step. So that's why I feel it's really about coming back to that inner compass for oneself and allowing my connection with the divine, my relationship with the with the divine to guide me, because my inner core, my deepest core principles is in alignment with what the divine wants of me. And I think having that deep faith has always made me feel very secure in taking these steps ahead. But yes, what is the big challenge? And I think it has come up that our big challenge is always, it's the ego, you know, and the many faces of ego, and how, you know, ego comes through in different ways. So I looked at it, and, you know, as I observed my journey, it was like three steps for me that has unfolded. And I think the first thing is recognizing the ego. And, you know, we can know about it, you know, it's pride, the arrogance, but it's also like the dependencies, you know, making my decisions because they're convenient or comfortable. Those are all elements of the ego, I do feel. Then it goes a bit more subtle in terms of my positions, how I'm approved or not approved. And often with positions, there's also power, privilege, all of these things come up as well. And so, you know, the false identity that we create is what I would refer to as the ego. And it's recognizing the subtlety of all of these things. You know, one simple example that I want to use, and that is, it's very much in the South African context, but I think it's a nice example to begin to see how the subtlety of these things manifests in our lives. You know, within South Africa after 94, when we had the changeover, one of the things that came into law was affirmative action. And I think it's always been in a way to try and equalize the inequality that had existed in the past. And many times, you know, people who were maybe of a white background or something like that would say, I'm not a racist, but I don't agree with affirmative action. And in some ways, when you explored it deeper, it was almost like I've had certain privileges and I wouldn't want to let go of those privileges and actually share resources, share opportunity. So I find that that's the subtle thing of ego, and beginning to look at that we hold on to certain identities, we hold on to certain positions, we hold on to certain power, etc., because it feeds us. It gives us privilege, it gives us opportunity, etc. And all of these are the illusions, because as long as we feed of something limited, we block ourselves from taking completely from God. When I feed off a limited position, when I feed off a limited pride because of a certain talent I have, or whatever the case may be, when I take the benefit of it now, it's almost like when I eat that unripe fruit now, I prevent myself from the sweetness of what the divine can offer me. So first thing is recognizing for myself at the subtle level how I have created dependencies and held on to certain things, and sometimes I can even justify it, but it blocks me from the subtle experience of the divine. It blocks me from really experiencing the sweetness of a divine relationship. It puts me into ordinariness. It puts me into limited highs and lows. You know, it's a bit like eating a chocolate bar. It gives you a lot of energy, but it gives you a low again. And that's how feeding the ego in that short moment, it gives you a high. There's a limited victory, but it gives you a low again because there's an emptiness behind it. And so it's always this deeper checking, in a sense, for the self, that I'm not, let me not keep feeding on that which doesn't really give me lasting fulfillment. So it's always checking that. And for me, that's the first step of recognizing the ego and recognizing, what do I still feed off? And it requires that kind of introspection, you know, that moments to step back and honestly ask myself, where is my intoxication coming from? Where is it really a deep sense of fulfillment, or is it a short-lived excitement? And to always double check that. Then the second aspect is like, once you recognize the ego and we can see how subtle it is and how it tends to play itself out so often, I think the second thing was not resisting or fighting the ego. It's like we develop a fear of the ego, and then we start suppressing because we're afraid of the ego. And that is another aspect, you know, that when we suppressing our fear of the ego, then we tend to shrink back. And that shrinking back, we think, that's being humble, you know, but you never allow, there isn't a real cleanliness inside. And so God's energy cannot work totally through you, because it's like we may not have an exaggerated sense of self, but it's almost when we recognize the exaggerated sense of self, the reaction to that is we create a diminished sense of self and thinking that will make me humble. And so it's also beginning to see that I don't get into that, because that also holds the soul back. That also can sometimes lead to me becoming critical of others because I'm holding back. I'm not really living my fullness. So I found that is also another element to check what is, and exploring what is that real sense of self-respect that I need as a child of God. But also that when I have that real sense of self-respect, how that begins to also emerge real humility. So that's all part of surrendering the falseness, and allowing the truth of who I am and how God wants to use me to emerge. And I think one of the things that you know, when the ego becomes, when I sort of learned to transcend the ego almost in a way, not to fight it in that way, but to rise above it, I think the first clear sign of that is I start thinking less. Daddy Janki used to always tell us, don't think too much, stop thinking. And I always used to wonder, Daddy, what do you mean by that? We have to think as long as we're in a body, and, you know, we have to plan and that. But it was almost this deeper awareness that the ego within us gets into overthinking. And either we're planning or we're trying to control outcomes. That's what we're ending up doing. And so recognizing that that is an element of ego, and that is what I have to surrender. And so the deep practice of silence is so vital, because it's like I need to get out of my head almost in a way, and with my heart to connect with the divine. And as I connect with the divine, with God from my heart, there's not much thinking happening there, but it's very clear then what's the next step for the soul. So no need to try and to plan out the world and change the world with my head, but stay connected with my heart, and the right thoughts come at the right time. And I think that's the learning for me. Every time when I notice that I'm into overthinking, I know it's the ego that I'm operating from, and that I need to just release myself from that so that I can truly offer my being to God. And then how God wants to use my energy will become very clear. I will feel moved, the right things will come in front of me to respond to. So it's like a lesson that I had was that my journey of surrender teaches me that I need to be available for God. And if I'm too busy inside, then I'm not available for God. So when there's quietness inside, I find that the right thoughts come, the right ideas come. I find the right things come my way as well, where it's very clear where I can offer and contribute. So that, and the other thing that I found also, that sometimes we think I can only offer in a particular way. Maybe I have IT skills, so that's how I can offer myself to God. Or maybe I have financial resources, so that's how I can offer myself to God. But sometimes when we stop thinking how I should and become more silent and connected and more available, God will direct you how you need to offer yourself. And I've often found that things that I've never considered as my skill started becoming a skill, because I said yes when it came in my way to do it. And the more I did it, the more I found that it's like a gift that begins to be given to you be used through you. So I find also this thing of, the more I make myself available, the more I will find the divine using me and developing the skills that I need and how I need to contribute. So that's another aspect that comes through. So in terms of transcending the ego and really surrendering, I think the first and foremost quality for me has been faith. Faith in the power of God's love. Faith in the purity of my intention. And the third aspect of faith has also been faith in the process of transformation. And you may have heard this expression, but like in the BK teachings, I always say drama is beneficial, And sometimes you ask yourself, I can't see the benefit here, but I have to trust it, And I think that has been one thing, acceptance because of faith. And so for me, that first step of just knowing that there is a greater truth, there is a divine love that I know I belong to, and I do trust the purity of my intentions. And the combination of that, it gives a deep security for the soul. And so then I can trust the process. So whatever happens in the drama of life, whatever unfolds, yes, there are moments where it feels very uncomfortable. I'm not saying I don't feel the discomfort, But I know that ultimately there's benefit. And I know ultimately it's not only my own growth, but there's a greater picture and a greater story that's unfolding here. And so I trust that process. And then the second aspect that I find is that when there's this faith, for me, that's the first quality. The second quality is detachment. You know, and detachment for me is releasing myself from everything that is limited. I'd like to read a quotation on spiritual detachment, which I found very inspiring. And it goes that spiritual detachment is the means by which you withdraw from distractions of power so that you can experience the authentic power of God that is pure love. So it's like really releasing myself, withdrawing myself from the distractions of limited power or limited benefit or limited privilege, whatever, so that you can experience the authentic power of God that is pure love. So I find that that's also always bringing that mirror back for the self and to see that what is it feeding me and where do I take my sustenance from? And then, of course, the third thing is really to continuously deepen the experience of God's love, that it is love. Ultimately, it's the experience of God's love that restores my sense of self-respect. And, you know, the greatest honor for the soul is really to feel that God chooses you as an instrument for whatever task that needs to be done. That is the greatest honor. And so how clean and clear I keep that attention on myself for, so that in whatever situation and whenever I can be used for whatever task that God chooses me to be an instrument for. An instrument never chooses the task. An instrument makes itself available, and the master chooses the task that the instrument will be used for. And I think it's always holding that awareness, make myself available, but to make myself available, I have to be dependable and I have to be clean. So, you know, Daddy would always remind us of truth, honesty, and then cleanliness and simplicity. And so it's bringing back those elements that to be that true instrument is to always keep that attention. I'd like to just end off with a poem that Nelson Mandela had read. And it's a poem by Marianne Williamson, but I think it's a poem that I always take inspiration from, and it's powerful. So I'd like to just end off with that and then take questions if there are any and do a meditation. So the poem is, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So, Om Shanti, and those were some of the thoughts and ideas I wanted to share from my own personal journey, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Sister Pratibha, for sharing your personal journey in such a detailed way. Okay, in the interest of time, I'll just take one small question. It's a very important question, actually, I feel. Someone is asking that you all have spoken a lot today about surrender of the mind. So can you please just tell a very brief one sentence answer that what is the tip to surrender my mind to God? How can I do that?
I think one particular definition of surrender that is very useful in terms of surrendering the mind is simply that attention not to have thoughts that are wasteful or negative. So keeping that attention to always keeping my mind positive and elevated is key. Yeah.
Right.
And of course, remembrance of God supports that. Yeah.
Right. So thank you so much. I think the person who's asked the question, let me give you a good news that it is positivity, which we are starting the next series on, the workshop and the talk. So thank you, Sister Pratibha. So I would now request our seniors we have with us, Dr. Ashok Mehta and Sister Claudia. So both of you to please say the vote of thanks. Over to you, Dr. Mehta.
Thank you, Pratibha Ben. I have probably not met you, but your personal journey was very inspiring. It's almost like Gandhi's, Mahatma Gandhi's journey in South Africa, probably at a very young age, that you had to go to a school and you had to go to another town just to study. And I know how hostile that atmosphere was there in those years. I have met some of the leaders from South Africa, maybe 25 years back, when they came for used to have that foreigners meeting, and it was also very inspiring. I think the surrender that you did at a very young age, at a very tender age, is also very, very inspiring for young people, those who are listening to you. I think your surrender is a classical example how Baba attracts the fresh minds. That's what Baba did for the Yagya, to pick up all the young children from the school. And those 300 children, I think they were the foundations of the Yagya. So you are belonging to that caliber. Congratulations for your courage, for your dedication to work in the hostile atmosphere of South Africa in the early years. I think you require a lot of greetings, congratulations, and good wishes for you. Thank you very much for sharing your beautiful thoughts there. And your name is also very beautiful. Daya Ben.
Thank you, Doctor.
Your last name is Daya. Normally, Daya Ben is a first name. So
there's a story behind that. At some point, they were not allowing more than certain number of members of a particular family to come into the country. So what had happened was my father got the name of his father as a surname and not the original surname. So that's why my surname is actually my grandfather's name.
Okay, so there you are.
Yeah, everything has a benefit. Yeah.
Daya Bhai, we have Daya Bhai, but not Daya Bhai. Dayal Bhai, yes, but anyway.
Not Dayal, it's Daya. It's Daya.
Yeah.
Daya.
Daya, okay. So now we call you Daya, so that's difference again in pronunciation. That makes a difference.
Thank you. I take that as a blessing.
No, I'm certain his name was Daya, the wise man. You know, that's the name normally in Gujarati, Daya. So from Daya, they have made you Daya. That's possibility.
Good. Thank you.
Om Shanti. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sister Pratiba, for you probably this afternoon. But it was very inspired to hear you because most of the time people are scared of the word surrender. Though they think surrender, they are going to lose something. But in reality, it brings victory. So when we surrender, you can see Gandhiji, because he surrendered, we got India independence. So that's when we surrender our thoughts, when we surrender everything for the best, we become victorious. So when did you show in your practical life by surrendering how you became victorious? So thank you very much. I appreciate to hear from you. So see you again sometime. I will meet you again one day personally.
Thank you, Shanti. I'm sure we've met in Madhuban. But yes, the season started already, and so I'm sure we'll meet in February. That's when I'm planning to go. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you. And let me just tell you, with this 50th workshop and the episode which we did, we've completed 2 years of our journey. So please, with a bated breath, await. In the next 12 hours, we'll be celebrating our birthday. I would wish all of you all to please join. It's India time morning, and the West Coast time, US, Canada, is 8:30 p.m. So 12 hours from now, we'll be having our 3 seniors, Brother Eric, in conversation with Brother Charlie from Australia and Asha Didi from Om Shanti Retreat Center. So as we always do, our values workshops also are very, very valuable for us. And we celebrate the 2nd anniversary of that the next weekend. And we have these 2 beautiful sisters of ours who have really contributed a lot to our values workshops, Sister Jenna and Sister Aruna. And again, Brother Eric in conversation. We'll be announcing the details later as well. And we wanted to give you more and more new Rajyogi speakers who, through their wisdom and through their spiritual journey, can share a lot. So we have new speakers for the next 3rd year as well. So we start with positivity, as all of you say. We decided that the surrender of mind, as Sister Pratibha said, is to be positive. So that's the 51st episode. We'll be again announcing the details later. He's Dr. Roger Call. He's basically a palliative care physician and in knowledge since almost 40-50 years now. And he's an author as well. And we have with us for the workshop, again, another new sister for the episodes here for the workshops. It's Sister Antonella. She's the national coordinator of the BKs in Italy. So that will be after the work, after the talk. That's Saturday, 5th November. And this is our elegant calendar. If you want to be a part of our WhatsApp group, please share your WhatsApp numbers to either Sister Anu or Sister Vidhi in the chat box here. And finally, it's the Diwali time. So a beautiful invitation to all of you to write down your feedback, comments, that how we can improvise on in the 3rd year, which will be starting from tomorrow on positivity. So that's our emails, valuesforlifeseries@gmail.com, and also vancouver@ca.brahmakumaris.org. That's our websites. And all these workshops and episodes you can find out on the playlist here, or even on our YouTube channel of Vihasa India. You can see them, and we'll be sending you soon the synopsis of the talk, all the review materials as well in your emails if you all have provided. So with this, I'll just stop sharing the screen. And before we proceed to the meditation, there's always a big demand for the group photograph with the speaker. So I think, Anu sister, if you want to just do that quickly, then we'll go on to meditation.
Love to do that. We always love this, mark this moment, very, very precious moment. So everyone, please open your video if you want to take photo with Sister Pratiba. And very invaluable sharing, sister. Very, very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have more people. Yeah, I got it. Thank you. we can go to meditation.
So thank you so much. And I'll just play some soft music in the background. Is that okay? Fine.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
So let's take a moment to gently turn inwards. Allow yourself to return your awareness to your inner being. I am a being of living light, a spark of divine consciousness. And as I rest my mind, this awareness, I begin to reconnect that deep feeling, that deep inner energy of peace, shanti, of stillness. As I return to this pure awareness, who I truly am, releasing the layers of the old world, the old stories, external influence, entering this pristine, pure awareness of the self. And as I hold this awareness, very naturally, I become conscious beyond this dimension of time and space. In that highest dimension, pure light, beloved, divine, the portal of my heart, supreme soul resides. And I feel myself becoming absorbed in the energy, the purity, love, and sweet light. And I hold myself, just allow myself to be absorbed in the waves of that purity, the waves of that love. You are my world. And in this moment, I surrender. Like diving deeply into an ocean. I surrender to the divine love. But love, pure, unconditional, so gentle. Becomes still in that love. Only bring that powerful feeling of love, heart in full, mind still. Bring that power to my conscious mind and being. Allow my engagement with the world be infused with this pure love.
So, thank you so much once again, Sister Pratiba. Thank you for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity and best wishes, and congratulations on your anniversary as well for the Values Program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shanti. And happy Diwali to all of you for Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.